let me tell you something strange, something about silence in the digital age. We live in a time where almost everything is shared. Birthdays, mourning, coffee sunsets, tears, laughter, even pain dressed up in filters and captions. And yet in this noisy world, there are still those who remain completely invisible. They don't post. They don't narrate their lives. They don't seek the spotlight. They simply scroll quietly, observe deeply, and rarely speak. You might know someone like that, or maybe you are someone like that. And then there's the question that lingers in everyone's mind. Why? Why would anyone choose to stay unseen when the whole world seems to be screaming to be noticed? It's easy to assume they're shy, introverted, or lack confidence, but that's only part of the story. Beneath that silence lies a whole psychology one that speaks volumes about human nature, self-perception, and a kind of quiet rebellion against a culture obsessed with visibility. Music. You see, for some people, silence isn't emptiness. It's control, the power to choose what the world doesn't get to know. Because whether we admit it or not, social media has redefined who we are. It rewards noise. It celebrates display. And yet, ironically, those who live in the shadows are often the ones who see the clearest. They watch without interrupting. They think before reacting. They analyze before judging. Psychologists have found something fascinating. People who post less often tend to have higher levels of self-restraint, introspection, and emotional independence. They're less influenced by social comparison or external validation. In other words, they're not trying to prove who they are. They're trying to understand it. And in a world drowning in performances, that's a rare thing. Let's be honest, most of what we post isn't just communication. It's identity crafting. It's an unconscious audition for belonging. Every photo, every caption, every status says, "This is who I am. Do you approve?" But when you stop posting, something shifts. You begin to separate your worth from digital applause. You stop thinking in captions. You start living moments for yourself, not for a lens. And that's the secret psychology behind people who don't post. They crave authenticity in a space that feels increasingly staged. They don't hate social media. They just can't find themselves in it anymore. It's not about being anti-technology or anti-social. It's about refusing to reduce life to highlights. Because once you've seen how easily perception can be manipulated, you start to value what can't be posted. Silence, depth, imperfection, truth. For some, the decision to stop posting comes from emotional burnout. Maybe they once shared everything until one day it no longer felt real. They realized that every time they shared something beautiful, they felt an invisible pressure to outdo themselves. They weren't living anymore, they were performing. So they quit quietly, no announcement, just a slow fade from the feed. Music. But here's what people often misunderstand. Not posting doesn't mean not feeling. It doesn't mean they don't care. In fact, they care deeply about presence, about meaning, about protecting what's sacred. In psychology, there's a concept called psychological ownership. It's the feeling that a thought, a memory, or an experience belongs deeply to you. But the moment you post it, that sense of ownership fades just a little. The memory becomes shared property open to judgment, misinterpretation, even mockery. So, those who don't post are guarding that sense of ownership, protecting life itself from being diluted. Maybe that's not sadness or withdrawal. Maybe it's a quiet kind of freedom. Think about it. When was the last time you did something meaningful and didn't feel the urge to share it? When was the last time you laughed, cried, or achieved something without thinking about how it would look online? That impulse to share, that reflex, it's not natural, it's conditioned. It's the result of years of likes, shares, and dopamine loops training our brains to equate validation with value. So, when someone steps out of that system, it can look like rebellion, but it's also healing. They rediscover the simplicity of doing things just for themselves, cooking without photographing it, traveling without tagging it, feeling without explaining it. And in that space, something awakens a self-awareness that needs no audience. But not everyone who stays silent does it from peace. Some do it out of fear. Fear of judgment, fear of being misunderstood, fear that even if they speak, no one will really listen. Social media has amplified a subtle kind of anxiety. Psychologists call it self-presentational pressure. It's that constant awareness that you're being watched even when you're not. And for many, that's exhausting. They're tired of looking okay, tired of trying to be likable, tired of feeling like every word can be picked apart or worse, ignored. So they retreat not because they don't want to connect, but because the cost of visibility feels too high. They want to be seen, but truly not superficially. And ironically, sometimes the quietest people online have the loudest minds. Their thoughts echo, their feelings overflow, but instead of creating noise, they choose stillness. Because deep down, they understand something most people forget. Not everything you experience is meant to be witnessed. Music. There's a deep philosophical undertone to that silence. In a world constantly shouting, "Look at me," choosing invisibility becomes an act of self-definition. It's a silent statement. I exist even without your perception. They still scroll. They still smile at others' joy and ache at others' pain. But they rarely project, because they understand. The most profound things in life, growth, grief, transformation, happen quietly, unseen, unposted. And when you've lived through those private transformations, you learn that being unseen is not the same as being insignificant. It's where identity is formed, not performed. Music. Here lies the paradox of our time. Social media was built to connect us, yet it often makes us feel more alone. When you stop posting, you stop chasing digital closeness and begin to rebuild real connection. You notice who checks in without needing updates. You see who remembers you without reminders. Those relationships, raw, unfiltered, unbroadcasted, carry real weight. They feel warmer, heavier, more real. And the people who don't post, they live in that space. They build relationships that need no proof. They find comfort in unshared moments. They let life unfold without turning it into content. Music. Part of that silence is also about identity security, knowing who you are, even when no one's watching. When you're comfortable in your own presence, you don't need an audience to validate your worth. That's not arrogance, that's peace. And paradoxically, those who speak the least often have the most fascinating stories to tell. But they save them for when you're sitting across the table, not across a screen. To them, real connection isn't measured in likes or comments, but in shared silence and eyes meeting in laughter that doesn't need witnesses. These are people who carry worlds within them, who feel deeply observed constantly and understand quietly. They don't need the world to applaud their existence, they just need to live it. And maybe in a world desperate to be seen, their silence is a mirror, a reminder that not everything meaningful needs to be shared, that sometimes the most human thing you can do is keep something entirely for yourself. Music. You know what's fascinating? The longer someone stays off social media, the more they begin to see the world differently. Colors look richer, time feels slower, conversations feel deeper, as if stepping away from the noise makes everything real again. Because when you stop performing, you start experiencing. There's a quiet beauty in walking through life without needing proof of every step. You're not thinking about angles or lighting or captions. You're just there fully alive inside the moment instead of outside it. And that's something social media rarely lets us do anymore. But the psychology behind this goes deeper than preference or taste. It's rooted in how our brains process validation. Every time we post and get attention, likes, hearts, comments, our brain releases dopamine, the chemical tied to reward and addiction. Over time, we crave that feedback loop. We start thinking in shareable moments, not real ones. Now imagine someone who resists that loop. That's not disinterest, that's discipline. It takes self-awareness to resist something designed to keep you hooked. People who don't post often have a strong internal locus of control, a belief that worth and happiness come from within, not from outside approval. They don't need the digital echo of, "You're enough to believe it." And research shows that those who take extended breaks from posting or scrolling often report higher emotional balance and life satisfaction. Because when your sense of identity isn't constantly mirrored back to you, it becomes real. You stop editing your life to make it digestible, you start living it fully. And maybe that's the real rebellion, to stay whole in a world that rewards fragments. Music. Of course, silence doesn't always mean serenity. Sometimes it hides fatigue. For many, social media was once a space for connection, but it became a source of exhaustion. There's a quiet kind of fatigue that comes from watching everyone's highlight reels, while you're still stitching together your behind the scenes. You start comparing even when you don't want to. You start doubting even when you know better. So one day you step back, not out of bitterness, but out of self-preservation. You realize you don't owe the world a performance. You don't need to prove your happiness to be believed. That's one of the quiet truths of this generation. We've mistaken visibility for value. but real meaning doesn't need witnesses. The most important moments of your life, growth, heartbreak, small kindnesses, will happen unseen. No cameras, no captions, no audience, just you. And maybe that's what those who don't post understand best. They know that privacy isn't loneliness, it's intimacy with yourself. When you stop broadcasting, you begin to hear your own voice again. You reconnect with your quiet desires, your forgotten fears, your inner compass. It's not withdrawal, it's a homecoming. Music. Of course, silence has its doubts too. You'll wonder if being quiet makes you invisible, if you're falling behind while everyone else performs progress. But over time, you realize something gentle. Your worth doesn't disappear when nobody's looking. It's still there, steady like the hum of a quiet room after a storm. Maybe that's what true confidence really is, not the loud declaration of self online, but the calm assurance of self offline. People say, if you didn't post it, did it even happen? But the truth is, the moments that shape you most rarely make it to the feed. Your growth, your heartbreak, your small victories, your quiet acts of kindness, they live in memory, not media. And maybe that's enough. In psychology, authentic self-expression means congruence, the alignment between who you are inside and who you show to the world. But in the age of filters and algorithms, that alignment gets blurred. We start living as edited versions of ourselves curated for approval. So, when someone chooses silence, it may be their way of staying congruent, of protecting the fragile bridge between their inner and outer world. They don't need to display their emotions to prove they're real. They don't need to capture every sunset to remember how it felt. They live fully, quietly, truthfully. Avsexes. And paradoxically, those who live quietly often feel life most intensely. They aren't distracted by performance. They notice what others miss: the shifting light on a wall, the pause before words, the faraway sound of laughter. They are present, and presence is the rarest currency in a world built on attention. Still, their presence often makes them misunderstood. People label them cold, detached, or distant. But look closer. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's depth. It's the calm that comes from no longer needing to explain to be understood. It's the quiet confidence of being known by a few rather than noticed by many. They know not every truth is meant for the crowd. Some parts of you deserve to remain untouched by algorithms and opinions. Because once something becomes public, it's no longer fully yours. It belongs to interpretation, to judgment, to trend. And some moments are simply too sacred for that. So next time you see someone who never posts, don't assume they're hiding. Maybe they're just living. Maybe they've found peace in the quiet corners of existence, the ones untouched by the blue glow of a screen. Maybe they're the ones who've remembered what the rest of us forgot. That being unseen doesn't mean being alone. That being quiet doesn't mean being empty. And that sometimes the truest expression of who you are is silence. Because in the end, we weren't meant to be performances. We were meant to be people. And those who don't post, they remind us of that every quiet, unfiltered, beautifully invisible day.